Okay, good morning, everyone. And every day we rise is a great day to be alive. And the Seven Cities Forums of Hampton Roads presents Portsmouth Coffee Talks morning show. My name is James Slim Overton, and I'm here with co-hosts Leah Drake Stitt and Thomas the Colonel Chapman.
Good
Good morning,
morning.
co-host.
Good morning to you.
Yes, I like to mention Leah, especially you. You see, I have my bench proud hat on.
I see you have your
Okay,
big
and
cloud hat
do
on.
you know why?
And why is that? Tell me why.
Because the LSU girls in the first
They
half,
wore it out.
the
They wore it out.
bench the bench came in and and showed why there is a bench,
Exactly.
because two of the
Exactly.
stars got in foul trouble early, so they set them down, and that girl came in there and scored 21 points in the first
Yes.
half from three. So I had my bench proud hat on this morning in honor of them, and shout out to Iowa, who put up a good fight, but the girls just had too much for them. Even one girl shooting threes, that can bring you back. But when you got five other players hitting in double figures, it's kind of hard to beat. So
Kind of hard to do it. That's for
congratulations
sure.
to LSU, first time ever winning a national championship. The girls did it, the boys haven't done it yet. So history was made.
History
And
was
as
definitely
far as
made.
scored 102 points, that was history.
Mm-hmm.
They never scored that many points in a championship game. Okay, just wanted to go over that. And today, of course, let me mention this too. This month is National Donate Life Month. Among the other donate months, it's a list of months of what it is, or what it is this month. But it's also National Autism Awareness Month. And I thought I'd bring that up since we did have a show featuring autism.
Yes.
So, but National Donate Life Month, dear to my heart. Make sure you donate. I mean, well, you sign up on your license.
Yeah, sign up.
Yeah, don't
Sign up.
donate.
Don't donate right now. Just sign up.
Yeah, don't go down and donate right now, because that wouldn't be good. But anyway, just be aware of how many people out there waiting on the list for organ donation. Okay, now let's get into our guest today. Our guest today is Commissioner of Revenue in the city of Portsmouth, Franklin Edmondson. You all know him as Frankie Edmondson, and he's agreed to be with us today and talk about what goes on in his office. And first met Frankie, I guess in the 90s, and then we were supporting opposing candidates. And that's when I met him. And I looked over there at Frankie and looked like a little high school guy. And they beat us out. But that goes to show you can be opposites in the political game, but it doesn't have to be that way in the long run. But because since that, we never did, we still respected each other. We just supported different candidates. And we've been sort of supporting the same candidates. I've been supporting him ever since. So it's not how you start, it's how you end. But anyway, Frankie, welcome this morning. Thanks for being here.
Well, good morning, team, and good morning, Slim. I can tell you, I look back very fondly of the time that we did go. I wasn't educated enough at that point in time, right? You got me straight pretty soon after that, but we got together as quickly as we could, and I'm so glad we did. That's the wonderful thing about Portsmouth and about politics, is that you might disagree on some things, but you can always come together. And I know several people on your team. I don't met the Colonel yet, but I'm looking forward to meeting him. But Miss Leah Stith, I don't know of a campaign I worked on that I didn't have her support, and I didn't support her. So we've been working on many, many issues together out there too. And you're right, I did start very young, but I'm working hard to do the best I can, and I've learned a lot through the years, and I want to appreciate and thank both of you for your insight and your encouragement of me through the years. And so thank you so much.
You're quite welcome.
And Frank, as you do your remembering, we go back to when you were in high school, when you were just getting started out here in the political arena. As a youngster, James said you look like you were in high school, but when I met you, you were in high school.
Well, I've been doing this a long, long time. I can date back to one of the first modern day city hall days, believe it or not. And I was in the 7th grade. I was on council, and then that's when Dr. Holly was so involved, and others through the city. We can call names all day long, but I'll be honest with you, most people on your show would know all of them. They were very instrumental through the years. And I can tell you, I'm so glad our communities are coming together as opposed to pulling apart. So you two have been real instrumental in that. And I appreciate all your efforts.
Thank you, Frankie.
Thank you, Frankie. I appreciate that. And you just never burn your political bridges, because
That's
you never
right.
know down the road who you might need, who you might want to support, or who you might need to support you. But
But
anyway,
Slim,
Frankie,
I will say it is
go
nice
ahead.
to win, though.
Yeah,
It
it
is
is nice to win. It is nice to win. Yes, indeed. But Frankie, let's start here. A lot of people in the city of Portsmouth come to your office for something during their lifetime. But start out by explaining the difference, because you're all connected. You're kind of connected with the treasurer's office and the assessor's office. You all do different things, but the commissioner of revenue is kind of involved in all of that. So explain, of course, state code dictates what you all do and what kind of involvement you have in your different areas. But explain the differences of what you do in the commissioner of revenue's office compared to the assessors and the city treasurer, even though you're all kind of connected there.
We are, yes, sir. And thank you so much for that question. It is very important. Virginia is a very unique place. And most people really don't understand at first what we do, but we have commissioners of revenue are one of 5 constitutional officers. So you remember the sheriff, Commonwealth's attorney, and the clerk of court, and they deal with legal matters. And then the city treasurer, our treasurer, and the commissioner of revenue, they deal with financial matters. So we operate as an agent for the state as well as for the city on multiple financial issues dealing with tax assessments and so forth. We do work on behalf of the city, and we also work on behalf of the state, in that we are a state depository for state income tax and so forth. So the reality of it is that we have a multi-jurisdictional, multifaceted role, if you will. We operate as tax administrators as well as tax enforcers or law enforcement officers on behalf of the locality and the state. In some localities, such as counties, commissioners of the revenue do real estate, but here, like in Portsmouth and most other cities, they have real estate assessors. So that duty is separate from our offices. So to really hit the ground running, our role is all personal property, a business personal property. So you look at every asset of what we deal with is either individual person and or business. So we deal with personal property. That's all your car, truck, trains, trailers, motorcycles, all of those types of things. And then on the business side, it's your business license, personal property, business tangible, any type of excise tax, admissions tax, meals tax, all of those types of things. And then we generate somewhere between $66 and $70 million a year on behalf of the men and women here at Portsmouth, or the citizens of Portsmouth. Our office is comprised of about 21 full-time equivalent, and that's somewhere between $3.2 and $3.5 million a year per individual in our offices that contribute to the overall revenue collections. If what the treasurer collects, that's the major difference. So the commissioner of revenue assesses those things and also administers some sort of exemption programs, and then the treasurer collects. So if you will, we keep a scroll, a book, a record, if you will, and then the treasurer collects off of those funds. And so Virginia is unique in a sense that we have a checks and balances, if you will. Not all offices go under one. So if you get upset with the commission revenue, maybe you deal with the treasurer, get upset with the treasurer, maybe you deal with commission revenue. But the idea is that we report directly to the voters. We have to work with city council, city management, or administration, if you will, and city staff, but we also do work directly for the individual citizen. So on behalf of the citizen, it's my job to make sure that those tax assessments are done correctly and that they're done fairly or equitably, and they're done in such a way that each individual has a voice, particularly on election day every 4 years, to say maybe you're doing a pretty good job or maybe you're not. And I can just tell you, it's a very complex issue, and I'm so glad to be here today to talk to you about it, because if we get it correct at this point, then we have the much needed resources to help run the city.
Yeah, Frankie, I can remember two issues that where all three of those offices that I mentioned had to work together. When the port came in and was sitting on Portsmouth property, and those cranes came in, and you had to figure out how to tax and assess. It took all three of you, and the Jordan Bridge as well. It took all three of those offices to come together to try to figure out how are we going to tax, because it's sitting on Portsmouth property. And I don't know what was the outcome of the cranes situation.
Well, uniquely, I can tell you, I'm not an attorney. I did sleep at a Holiday Inn Express last night, so but all joking aside, that was one of the most major ordeals or situations that we've had throughout the history of Portsmouth. That port at the time was the #1 port in the world, not just the Commonwealth of Virginia or the United States. I mean, it rivaled the #1 port in the world, excuse me, and it was being operated by AP Moeller, APM, if you will, Merz Sealand. And so that was the #1, #2 shipping company in the world, at the time, and they still are to this day. They're not owners of that facility any longer, but however, and I would just start out by saying they were excellent corporate citizens. We worked very well with them to establish their taxes. But as you might imagine, and I hate to use this term, but the devil's in the details. So every case that we get in our office is a potential lawsuit, if you will. So the voters and the taxpayers, if you will, have a right to appeal. So it's our job to try to get it correct, before it reaches appeal or some sort of adverse status where you got a tax bill and somebody's unhappy with that bill, and then they want to seek relief and go to court or seek some sort of appeal process. So that location, specifically with the cranes, Virginia, coming, from the motherland, if you will, England, and having old English laws, it's a lot of this property law goes back to the intent of the owner of that property. So, you've heard some real estate law where if you affix something to a home or to a property, then it kind of becomes part of that property. Well, in this particular case, their intent was to keep those cranes there, make them part of the real estate, if you will. They want the real estate rate because the real estate rate is much lower in Portsmouth. So as an example, it's $1.30 to the today, and the personal property rate is $5 per 100. So they wanted obviously a much lower rate. They came in with the idea that the port, that those cranes rather, at the original FIG site, Virginia International Gateway site, were real estate. And upon doing our research, internally, externally, hiring some consultants and attorneys outside of the city. Back then, we worked with former city attorney, Mr. Oaksman, Tim Oaksman, you might remember her, him, and also Miss Alotha Willis, who was involved with, not Alotha Willis, I'm sorry, the city assessor at the time, to establish, that they were real estate. And so, right, I'm sorry, you're correct. And so having said that, we all did have to sit down, do the research, go through the process. But on the other hand, we did establish that they were their intent was to stay. Uniquely, and some, for your viewers may understand, we have to try to put a real world approach to this. So if you look at situations like a dry dock, that, similar type of circumstance, we looked at Busch Gardens and King's Dominion. They have roller coasters and other buildings that may not be look like a normal, a fixture or something affixed to a real estate. However, it's the true intent of those rides and of those dry docks and other places. We didn't have anything like that at the time in Portsmouth and in Virginia. So we were really relying on some individuals from the State Department of Taxation, as well as our local colleagues around Hampton Roads, to help us kind of assess that. They are considered real estate in large part because it's the true intent of their owner, they're not moving, from place to place. The main portion, if you will, on what we call tangible personal property is that it can be moved from place to place easily. Now, I don't know if you know, but I mean, we have to dive in, kind of deal with every case as individual. These those cranes that you're speaking of, it started out, was 8 of them. Now I believe they have 12 of them there. But the idea is they're on rails, and they do move like a railroad would up and down that berth, on the dock, if you will. And it's very secure, very safe, a very modern port. There's one of the top 3 in the world today that I'm aware of. One in Singapore, maybe one in South Korea, I think, arrival. But the reality of that facility, we had to get it right. It wasn't an opportunity. So if you can imagine, multi-million dollars, I think it was over $68 million worth of assets and equipment were there that our office put on the books then, and we were receiving, pretty good sizable personal, a business tangible rather, property from that site. And the cranes did go to real estate. However, it's still operational today, and we've only had one major lawsuit from that site, and not to be adverse or negative, but we won that. They were sold to a larger, a different company. They came in with a different approach, and because of the large amount, if you will, we went through a process, went to the circuit court here in Portsmouth. We won that particular case, were successful there, upholding our original assessment. And then we ended up going to the Supreme Court of Virginia, which was a complex nature. In the balance hung up about $3.8 million could have cost the tax city of Portsmouth if they had prevailed in that case. Fortunately, through manifest error and some other burdens that they had to prove, they weren't successful. Our personal property rights withstood the test of time and legal challenges, if you will. A unanimous consent decision from the Supreme Court of Virginia to allow us to continue to operate the way we do. And I was very proud of our individuals in our office, because we go to work every day on behalf of you, the taxpayers and the citizens. And so we treat every taxpayer the exact same. And the court acknowledged our uniformity, and that won the day. We treated the biggest and most expansive business in the city of Portsmouth just like we treat a mom and pop $50 barbershop nail salon. And I was proud of that. We administered the laws fairly and equitably, and we went to the highest court in the Commonwealth, and they agreed that we did that. We were very fortunate. Now, that particular case has been, featured in Virginia Association of Assessing Officers, as well as International Association of Assessing Officers reviews, when they talk about cases of how they should do things. And that was a lesson learned. We had to work with Mr. Billy Budd at the time. He became the assessor shortly after the other individuals we mentioned, then went into a situation of being, running that particular case. But that was a multi-million-dollar verdict that we could, they withstood we didn't have to pay money back. In other words, we didn't get extra money. We didn't have to pay the money back. And folks don't realize there's a 10% penalty when you pay that money back, if you will, if it's our fault. And so, if we do make an error, we have to pay for that. So the penalties, the interest rather, is at 10%. And I don't know of any institution in the country or in the Commonwealth today giving a 10% return on that investment. So, you really want to get it right the first time.
Frankie, and one last thing real quick, the Jordan Bridge I mentioned, and that's privately owned. And the uniqueness of that is half of it belongs to Chesapeake and half of it belongs to Portsmouth. And the difference was Chesapeake they had some deal with the company. They weren't charging taxes, but we wanted our taxes. How did that end up?
Well, I'm gonna say this, we don't deal with obviously real estate. I will tell you, I think, likewise, they're a good company, but they are trying, businesses are in business to make money, not to pay taxes. And so with that disclaimer, I will say, they ultimately settled a lawsuit. These things become legal in nature. So what an assessor might do or say could be different from a legal settlement. So that's just my contingent. I know I'm getting into long answers, and I apologize for that. But as a caveat, I'll tell you, from an assessment standpoint, I'll just say this: if you didn't have an overall general assessment, then why did you seek a relief? In other words, in Virginia, taxation is the rule, exemption is the exception. So if you don't have an exception, you should pay like every other taxpayer. So what ended up happening in that particular case, and I don't want to just argue the merits. I really don't know enough about it but I can tell you this: if you felt like if you didn't need an exemption from Chesapeake, then why did you seek one in Chesapeake? And the biggest answer to that was they didn't come to Portsmouth and get a similar exemption. They did open a business in Chesapeake, not in Portsmouth. So the reality of it is, when you talk about, where the repairing rights and where that bridge is built on land and on the water and who owns what, the bottom line is, if you didn't need a tax exemption, why didn't you seek one at the time? So obviously you must have thought you had one, or you wouldn't have tried to seek an exemption. And so you're right. Most of those projects like that across the country, or across the Commonwealth in particular, because those laws apply here, are complicated in nature. But I always try to get back to the basics. If you don't feel like you need a exemption, why are you trying to seek one? So they did reach an agreement, and the rule of law prevailed. For operating under agreement, I understand, and they pay a certain amount, for a period of time, and then we may revisit that at some future time. But here again, I'm not an attorney. I respect the attorneys and the legal process, and as citizens, we have to live with that.
Indeed.
I have a question for you. So is that same concept that you applied to the Jordan Bridge, is that the same concept that you applied to say the casino and also to the two tunnels going to Norfolk? And with that, for every per car coming in, this is multi-level question, do the city of Portsmouth get a piece of that cut?
Colonel, it's 6:30 in the morning, right? This is a heavy lifting on the very third question. I'm just kidding. I'm happy to answer it, and I'll tell you a multifaceted answer to your question. That is a very, very good question. And as a clarification, I'm going to try to give you a very short answer to that. One, professionally, our office did very little with regard to Jordan Bridge, because that was a real estate matter per se. Those toll structures or would have been in Chesapeake, or had been in Chesapeake. So there's a catch-22 in that regard. But yes, sir, we did apply. First of all, our office subscribes through we obviously have to follow the laws of the Commonwealth of Virginia. And of course, as you well know, those laws enable. So the four major things you see in Virginia law is shall or shall not, or may not. So the reality is Virginia law allows you to do certain things, and it tells you to do other things. And don't get me wrong, a lot of times there's no clear black and white answer to some of those things, and that you get into gray areas, and of course the devil's in the details. And then we have to hire attorneys and counsels at law to help us weed through all of these things. And so, having said that, the Jordan Bridge, I'll just take them each individually. The Jordan Bridge is a private, entity that owns and operates that facility. And so the reality is, and that's a real estate matter. So that's by agreement, or if you will, a settlement. They've reached a settlement, and that's been, resolved for the time being, or for the short term. The tolls, or the tunnel, if you will, you mentioned that. Both of those, the tolls on the tunnel as well as the casino, are under special legislation. And of course, my good friend, Ms. Stith, she spent a lot of time in Richmond. She and I pull our hair out on some of these measures, but it all goes back into, what does the code say? What does the law say? What does the act say that originated that particular, legislation, or that activity, if you will? So as an example, the tolls are in place because of General Assembly action, and then, it went through a process and the tolls were established. And so we're not debating that. But in that particular case, the apparatus and the things that basically are used to identify your vehicle toll amount are on state property. So there are political subdivisions that, for whatever reason, because of the Virginia code, do not pay taxes in a jurisdiction, if you will, federal, state, local. So if you have tax exemptions that we spoke of a little bit earlier, then it stands to reason they're going to exercise those exemptions. So I'm not sure of any other tolls, taxes rather, that can be placed on tolls or on the individuals, the company that runs the tunnel and or the way in which they collect those tolls. As far as the casino goes, obviously, I can give you a lot more detail with that because it's so fresh and new. And I'll tell you, it's set up under a tiered system. There are only 5 eligible licenses in the Commonwealth. 4 have been exercised to date as far as the voter referendum. And so Bristol, Danville, Portsmouth, and Norfolk have exercised and met the criteria with regards to voter referendum to approve that project. And the city of Richmond, as you might remember, made the news because they have yet to pass that with a referendum. Now, the way that system is, so out of the 5 licenses that are even eligible for the Commonwealth today, as we sit here in Virginia today, 4 have exercised, 3 are working on the construction, and I'm not sure the status of Norfolk, but I will say, they worked on their voters approved that project there, as I understand it. But in Portsmouth, and like all of them, they're under a system, so it's predicated. That is a little bit different because they report their proceeds to today. They report it to Virginia Lottery. That is their governing body or governing agency, if you will, state agency for that type of gaming. And so what happens is the law allows for them to oversee that. So they oversee all casino gaming in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So it's legal gaming and then illegal gaming, if you will, that's being discussed, as well throughout the state. And in this particular case, they pay on a tiered system. So several $1 million up to, so much reported. They call, and we call it, gross gaming revenue.
Mhm.
And then that gross gaming revenue goes through an accounting process, and then it's called adjusted gaming revenue. So they pay out predicated or specifically on gross gaming revenue. And so they call them community improvement organizations or community improvement zones. And that's in large part because Bristol, which was the first casino to come online, they actually are part of a multi-jurisdictional organization, if you will, like a regional approach, and they do a revenue share. Portsmouth is not under that same concept. And so the monies that go to Bristol, they support several communities in that area. The way it's set up in Portsmouth, we met the criteria just like the other localities did. And our revenue, adjusted gaming revenue that comes to Portsmouth, that initially it's a 6% payout, then it goes to a 7% payout, then potentially an 8% payout, predicated on the success, or I say success, but on the revenue generated by that activity. And so all of those funds, like in this particular, the first month they were in operation was about 13 days. And you may have heard a report. I'm going to speak in round numbers. I'm not going to be specific necessarily, but $547,000, over $500,000 in 13 days, should come to Portsmouth. The next month was about 1.48 million. So close to $1.5 million is what they call adjusted gaming revenue that this should be. So if we follow that logic throughout, it's potentially $12 to $16 million annually that we should be receiving from that entity moving forward.
Yes. I'm gonna let Slim go ahead and talk about the transition because we're coming up on the hour now.
Okay.
Okay, want to thank all the listeners on WGPL 1350 AM for listening this morning. we're transitioning to Facebook only. And if you want to continue to watch or listen to this intriguing conversation we're having with Frankie Edmondson, please tune in to my Facebook page. But thank you for listening, and we'll see you next Monday. All right.
On a lighter side, Frankie.
Oh,
On a lighter side, okay? For those who may not know, your office also has programs such as DMV Select and DMV To Go. I know I've had my experience with DMV To Go when we were running the reentry program in the sheriff's office. So maybe you would like to share with those who may not know about DMV To Go and what services they provide there.
yeah, thank you so much for that. We do have a DMV select office, which has about 16 to 20 transactions that you can do in our office. Primarily, you cannot do ID cards, licenses, and things of that nature. So what my rule of thumb kind of is, if it's in your wallet, probably not, but if it's in your vehicle, you can. So we can do tags, titles, all of those types of things with plates and everything else. That is an extra service that our office did apply to DMV. They recognized us some 17 years ago. We were awarded a DMV Select site. It is part of the city functions that we do in City Hall, but I'm the primary agent. As a constitutional officer, I have to sign that personally, and our office has to go through a training process and be able to offer that. We're very happy to do so. And we have for many, many years. But in addition to that DMV Select service, and so the way we get funds from them is we get a commission, if you will, from doing those transactions. So as we do those transactions, the cities get to 20% payout. The individual principal officer, which in this case is our office, gets a 80% payout. And then as a result of that, we can use those funds in our office and locally to benefit the community and to benefit our DMV Select. So we're very happy. I think it's the best kept secret. I've never tried so hard to tell everybody about it, and you get to the point where I didn't realize this. Great. So it's another service. So we are compensated differently from the state. It's not in our official requirements or responsibilities. However, we thought it was imperative to do that. So let me just tell you, in this particular point, so anything, and not to be adverse because it does happen, but individuals don't pay their taxes. They get something maybe called a DMV stop or something, which our office doesn't initiate. However, we help you to resolve it. So somebody gets a letter at home, they understand that they owe a tax, they got to come down, they want to renew their any function at DMV, but maybe they have a DMV hold or a stop. So they can come down to Portsmouth City Hall. They can pay off that tax, if you will. That hold can be removed, and then they walk across the hall and get what they needed done. So our thought was, how do we serve our public better? How do we help men and women, individuals, who are having a tough time? How do we help them through the rough patch? So our goal was to try whatever service we can. In addition to DMV, now with our relationship with DMV, you can get a tow responder in our office. You can get a fishing license. You can register your boat. You can get a hunting license, traffic license. We do a lot with, it used to be called Game and Inland Fisheries. Now you will know it as the Department of Wildlife Management. So we work very closely with other state agencies to provide additional services. So we're trying to be a one-stop shop. And having said that, we do invite and have on occasion in the past had a DMV To Go or DMV Connect. The DMV, as I understand it, DMV To Go is the electronic online portal. So
Right.
That's in place, but you also have the DMV Connect, where the DMV Connect agents come to our office by invitation. We set up a location for them. Most of the time it's in City Hall, and then they transact businesses there. A lot of folks have got bill IDs and other things from that, but it's all about service. And Leah, as well as I do. I mean, that's what we're there for. As servant leaders, we hope to be able to be in the community and provide those necessary functions that people need, help them go through the processes to make this a better community in which to live, work, and play. So we're happy to be able to do that.
Very good.
Excellent, excellent. So, as a servant leader and a tax advocate, I mean, could you kind of break down when we talk about the real estate tax relief that your office
Mhm.
supports? And so, a lot of people want to know one, it's multi-level question too, is
Wake up, Frankie. Here it
yes,
comes.
there are some, if you have a disability for aid, you get a exemption for a disability. Then you have some veterans that have disabilities, but they're not at the 100% total and permanent disability, or do they qualify? And when I hit 65, is it automatic that I get the tax relief for being aged? And what do I have to do if it's not automatic?
Okay. I'm gonna try to hit every one of them, and if I don't get it, you please remind me.
Yes.
I can tell you, we do have several exemption programs in the city of Portsmouth and in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We administer some, not all. So we work, we'll help. So for Portsmouth, as an example, for veterans is separate and apart from the individuals who may receive a real estate tax exemption or real estate tax freeze through social services. So our office helps individuals complete the paperwork, and then for that particular program, it's submitted to the Department of Social Services, and then they work on establishing someone's eligibility for that exemption. On the other hand, and here again, anyone can come to our office. We have those, the forms and documents in-house. We can get those individuals, help them complete those forms and get them filed on their behalf. So that's the first part of any exemption status, or anybody seeking exemption. You have to complete the paperwork and get it submitted properly. And so our office is to help with that for that particular one. On the other hand, of the veterans, we take the way it's set up currently is they do file with our office, and then it's a you mentioned the term multifaceted, but they have to have letters and documentation, if you will, through the Veterans Administration. Once they meet the criteria as established by Virginia law through the Veterans Administration, then we're able to extend that to them. And so we do. We have, I would say, and sitting here today, over 400, close to 500 individuals who receive real estate tax exemptions as part of their, military service. They're being veterans. They've gone through the process. They've got the proper documentation that we're able to authenticate. First and foremost, I mentioned this earlier, taxation is the rule, exemption is the exception.
Mhm.
And it's my honor and indeed my privilege to offer that tax exemption. However, I owe it to every other taxpayer to ensure that they pay their fair share. And most of the individuals involved, they understand that. And so if they are at 80% completely, and it goes through some language in their letter and they don't meet that 100% threshold, then there could be some complications. There's two parts of that letter. And if you've ever seen one and dealt with the federal government, it's complicated. However, there are two components. One, that they're classified, their disability is classified up to 100%. And that's what the magic number we're looking for, if you will. And then their payout at up to 100. So if they're like 93% or 95%, disabled, but yet they're getting paid at that 100% level, then, recent discussions and recent, thoughts with regards to that code or that requirement extends that to individuals that are being paid at that level. And so as we continue to monitor the laws that govern this and work with individuals, it's always best to ask. Unfortunately, most of the time we get to yes, sometimes we can't. And if we can't get to yes, then we should be able to explain to the individuals why we can't get to yes and why what we need to work on to reach that. So we do have, unfortunately, some individuals who believe that they do qualify, and under Virginia code, they just don't at this time. Now, in addition to the real estate tax relief, the city of Portsmouth also has a personal property tax relief. So if you are receiving tax relief for real estate purposes in the city of Portsmouth, chances are that you qualify for tax relief on your personal property. One primary a personal property vehicle, if you will, can be exempted. And we apply the same, theory and the same approach to those as well. So we have, and we're happy to provide it. We just want to make sure that every person is taxed equitably and fairly, in the city, in accordance with the governing laws and prevailing laws of today. That doesn't mean, every first of the year, every January, February timeframe, General Assembly goes to Richmond. They enact laws. Most of those laws, unless they're in a special enabling legislation, become effective on July 1st. And then that's when most of the laws in the Commonwealth change. And so whatever that prevailing law is at that time, that's what we administer. Now, of course, if there are some questions, we have the city attorney's office we can refer to. Of course, other commissioners in other jurisdictions, we can pick up the phone or inquire with their office, Department of Taxation, and then the Attorney General's office through seeking some sort of opinion where they will opine on an issue, and then we go from there. But as your taxpayer advocate, my goal is to make sure we ask all the questions. In other words, how do we get to yes? If we can't get to yes, why can't we get there? And then that normally gives us a roadmap, if you will, or some bullet points, a project list, if you want to call it that, to work down to get to that point. Unfortunately, Portsmouth being, traditionally being a cash-strapped city, or revenue, we always are in need of more revenue, and the only way to get these revenue dollars to come in is to administer a fair and equitable tax structure. And I'll be the first one to tell you, I don't like taxes. I do not like taxes. I don't want to pay anymore. But I know this, I'm paying what I expected to pay. And I just hope that everyone, and I appreciate them having the confidence in me to be the person to stand up and say, I don't want you to pay 1 cent more than that you're supposed to pay, but I do want to encourage you to pay what you are supposed to pay. And I think, it's incumbent upon us to always be mindful of individuals that need help and to seek relief when appropriate. And I'll be more than happy to say, open the lines of communication, and we can always work with you. But I will say it's up to me, because I have to be the one to go back to those hardworking men and women, the firefighters and the police officers and the teachers and, the railroad workers, and you name it, shipyard workers, and a lot of folks who are listening to us today and say, well, they didn't have to pay theirs, they have to pay yours. And so we do have, you've heard me mention before, the enforcement piece of it is that we do have some special conservators of the peace. They can write a summons, and unfortunately, sometimes we have to take adverse actions, but we are very happy to extend those exemption programs, and we do our very best to administer them fairly and equitably to everyone.
And Frankie, staying with the light subjects like Leah mentioned.
I don't think he was happy with that question. Yeah, he's got
Well, I want to get it in because we're running out of time. I want to get this in and stand with I wanted to bring up some other things that you do in the office.
Right.
And I wanted to say also, it's important, the first part of the show, we brought up those things, explaining to citizens about the different revenue sources. I think that's important for citizens to know. You mentioned about cash strap, and they need to know that the burden is heavy on the citizens, but it's not completely on the citizens. We have other revenue sources, and they need to know about that. And that's why I brought that up in the beginning. But anyway, talk about people having a business license in the city of Portsmouth. And you and I talked about this as far as Portsmouth Coffee Talk being a state sanctioned LLC. Would we need a business license if we operate in Portsmouth? So explain to people, that a lot of people don't realize that they need a business license. And explain when would you need a business license in the city of Portsmouth? And if you're operating without it, what are the consequences, if any?
Yes, sir. I want to answer your question by starting out to say, I'm so happy to be here today, and I promise to come back. If you do have other questions, I will deal with them individually offline. So anybody that may have a question, I'm more than happy to try to answer it. We always have outreach and education with regards to what we do. So this is a great opportunity. I applaud each of you for what you're doing, getting up early and then working. Also, I know you extended to Thursday evening program. So I'm willing to come back anytime. Of course, we can discuss the schedule with that, but we do business license, and in Portsmouth and all across the Commonwealth, Virginia, of Virginia rather, it is a privilege, not necessarily a right, to have a business license. So you should have an idea, ask us, we'll set up a time. You can meet with an individual in our office. We can discuss it by phone. It's best to ask whether you need a license. And, you know, it's nice to think we got multi-million, multi-billion-dollar companies coming to Portsmouth, but our true bread and butter, excuse me, is small business and entrepreneurs. And so I grew up in a household. My mom was a small business owner my whole life. And I can just tell, or I hope not my whole life, but most of my life growing up as a young person. And I can just tell you, that's what we, you know, thrive on here in Portsmouth. And we have them all, from convenience stores, funeral homes, you know, mom and pop shops, restaurants. We go through the whole gamut. And, you know, I do enjoy working with the larger corporations and the big businesses, everybody that, you know, the companies and that sort of thing. But my heart really goes to those mom and pop shops that are trying to make it, and they're working, the families working the business. And I enjoy going to those places. You know, our family, my wife and I, Kathy, we're raising a family here. We enjoy going to Portsmouth businesses and supporting those businesses and going in and out of places. And I can just tell you that the long and short of it is, if you're operating a for-profit business, and the code says if you advertise yourself as such, then chances are you need a license. And so we're happy to review that with anyone. I would say err on the side of caution. The bottom line, if you let, it's up to $100,000. In most cases, you pay a $50 license. And so that $50 license allows you the privilege of conducting business for annual year. They operate from January through December on a calendar year basis. And then, of course, the first 2 months are a grace period. So from January to March the 1st, that's when the renewal season is every year. So if you get a license in January, obviously it's through December 31st. If you get a license on December 30, it's going to expire on December 31st. They all expire on that day, and they all renew, if you will, on January 1st. And so chances are you need a license, and that there are some exceptions, nonprofits, obviously churches and other organizations, but it's always best to ask. Here again, I mentioned to you, in Virginia, taxation is the rule, exemption is the exception.
Okay.
And your office has been very, very good at addressing these issues for the public. I know that I've had individuals who've told me that they've had to call to find out and to be counseled by those in your office as to whether they did indeed need a business license. So, and I know that your office has also been very receptive to me in those times when I've come down and needed services as well. So I want to thank you and your staff for the fine work that you're doing within your office as well.
You know, I want to take this opportunity. You really gave me a great opportunity. I don't know the hour may be running late. I'm having so much fun. I hadn't even looked at the clock. You keep me informed on the time, but I can tell you this. Well, you're right. We do have some great individuals who work in our office, and I just take my hat off to them. I'm happy to get up and go to work every day. Being your commissioner revenue is true to highlight of my life professionally. And I can just tell you, I've served at every level through the association, president of the association, president of all the constitutional officers, Virginia Association of Local Elected Constitutional Officers. And I've been very involved on the state level, but I always come home to Portsmouth. And I can tell you, I'm happy. I was just recognized last year with the Sam T. Barfield Award, which is the highest award that a sitting commissioner can get from their colleagues. And you probably heard a little bit about it. You may hear more about it going forward. But I'm very proud and happy of that. But I'm also very proud and happy that you and your organizations through the years recognize my involvement. And I really have a special place in my heart and on my mantle for the McCracken Award that I got for leadership with regards to Truxton. And you know how meaningful that was to me to receive that, because I am Portsmouth, you know, born and bred, and I love the citizens here. We do everything we can. I will say, you know, Cardell Patillo Sr., most people know his son is the chairman of the school board, but Cardell Patillo Sr. and I started in this job together. We worked on a lot of campaigns prior to that, and we end up coming to the commissioner's office together, and I'm happy to report that he's still with me. A lot of people know him rather, and he's still working very diligently. He's our a chief deputy in our office, and he's our chief of staff. Wanda Smith, who is another award winning recipient of state award. She's a chief deputy for revenue, and then a lot of folks on the program, they know when Tom. She's a chief deputy. She's been down with the commissioner's office for many, many years, and we work as a team. We operate our leadership as a team, and then of course we have some 20 plus other deputies who help us throughout the year. We're very fortunate to have very capable individuals down there working. So we just go to work every day to try to help. And I invite you, if you have something we talked about today sparks an interest, that you know about it, fine. And then, like I said, I'm more than happy to come back in the future. This is a great job. We get a chance to deal with political leaders and business leaders, religious leaders, community leaders, and you name it. But it also gives us a way to give back to the city. And so, you know, I might be talking to a teacher one day, a bus driver, police officer, firefighter, what have you. The main focus, obviously, is to be in service to the citizens that have given us this great opportunity to serve. And I'm just happy to do that. I'm happy to call Portsmouth home, and I just really am proud of the work that you're doing, giving us this opportunity to reach out and continue our service.
Go ahead, Colonel. I think you will.
Yes.
Finish
I'm gonna turn it down a little bit and get a softball question,
Okay.
as Leah says. So, you know, the emphasis over the years, over the decades, is for single family homes.
Yeah.
So, but you see coming up these large apartment buildings. So under the business property taxes, property accounts, what is the tax rate for these, for your single family homes versus these multi-duplex apartments? And or do they have the owners of those apartments paying a different tax be adjusted by their occupancy?
Well, I thought you were going to give me a softball question, but my daughter, all-star softball players, and I coached softball teams, so I hope I can hit this. But the short answer is Portsmouth is one of few that are grandfathered in on a special tax with regards to the rental of real estate. I hope this answers your question. If not, please, correct me. But the reality of it is, it's $1 per year per unit. So, excuse me, per month rather, $1 per month per unit, which equates to about $12 per unit. So whether you have an individual home that you're renting, normally we look at 5 or more, but the code rarely says any residential unit that's being rented. So apartment complexes is predicated on the number of units that they pay. Now, that doesn't mean that's the only tax they pay, but I heard the business aspect of it. So traditionally business, and it goes on the business that you're in, it's per 100. So it'd be as low as 16 cents per 100 for one category, and then as much as 58 cents per 100 for another category. So it's a sliding scale predicated on what the individuals are doing. That's different from sales, if you will. Some individuals have multiple licenses where they may have a service and they sell retail, and then they'll have a separate license for that. However, you mentioned the real rental of real estate. So an apartment complex, if you will, or somebody has a duplex or a small, they're renting their homes and so forth. That is a special tax for the city of Portsmouth. And they do pay $1 per month. So $12 a year, where the minimum license outside of that is $50. So the lowest license, whether you make a $1 or up to $100,000, for all intents purposes, is $50 a year. And then if you're over $100,000, it's predicated on the type of business that you're doing and that scale. But we have forms that we can look at, we can talk about. One other caveat to that is you do have manufacturing. Manufacturers have a special rate, $3 per 100 on, we call it business tangible. And then of course they don't pay necessarily pay for a business license, depending on what they do. So if they're manufacturing, they get a break per the Virginia code.
Frankie, I want to ask this. One of the council meetings, they brought up looking into Airbnbs in the city of Portsmouth.
James,
And got you again, huh?
got me again.
Airbnbs in the city of Portsmouth. And you think that might end up being a category within itself for regulation, or will it just fall under people renting their home? Because it's a whole different kind of situation, especially with the casino here now. A lot of people
That's right.
want to come here, and we don't have a lot of hotels. And even if we did, a lot of people like that Airbnb home like situation at the same cost in many cases as a hotel, with a lot more amenities.
I'm going to try to be quick with the answer. In Portsmouth, and I'll tell you, it's unique in the sense that we have to get zoning approval in order to have a business. So currently, the people will ask, do you have Airbnbs in Portsmouth? The answer is yes, we do have Airbnbs in Portsmouth. Let's make no mistake about it. They're here. And to be honest with you, I hope they stay, and I hope they're successful. And I hope we make as much money as we can, because we know they're going to be there anyway. So we're trying to work with them. Unfortunately, the current ordinances in the city of Portsmouth do not allow for Airbnb as they're currently written. So having said that, I told you earlier, taxation is the rule and exemption is the exception. So the reality of it is that we do get information through the years on individuals that are operating Airbnbs. And then in some cases, they pay taxes at the end of the year predicated on their state filings and such. And so it's our job. We do have a compliance office. That compliance office will then reach out to the individual. I say office, it's a unit in our office that administers compliance with regards to the state and local laws. So Airbnb is a major one. As a matter of fact, currently I'm the chair of Hampton Roads District Commissioners Association, and we just had a very in-depth conversation and a presentation on transit occupancy taxes and those types of things with regards to excise taxes that individuals are going to have to pay in accordance with Airbnb. So Airbnb may be the most popular, maybe the one people recognize. There are other types of platforms where people rent those homes, rent those places from, and that's the new norm. Virginia public policy and Portsmouth public policy really has not kept up with the fact of what the new, I call it gig economy, some other people call it other things, but the gig economy is what we really need to address. And here again, I'll say this to you. This is it's the challenge, opportunity, burden, if you will, of our office to maintain all of these things that we talked about today. And then, as you heard, we have 3 emerging revenue enhancements: offshore wind, which we're elated about that, the casino gaming that we're very happy about, and then medical marijuana. So those are enabling legislations in the city of Portsmouth, in the Commonwealth of Virginia, rather, that the city of Portsmouth is the only locality in the Commonwealth that's doing all 3 at the same time.
At the same time, yes.
We still have the same staff, same individuals. So I'm so very proud of our team for being able to stay on top of these things, as well as maintain the level of professionalism and knowledge that we have had to have on all these others. So I can just tell you, I couldn't do it by myself, and I appreciate the team. So we do have Airbnbs. We are working with the city to try to make sure we make that a painless, seamless process. As you know, you've heard a lot about it because of Norfolk, because of Virginia Beach and others who have had a huge Airbnb influx. We are too, also, if you will, and we're on top of it. But the final chapter has not been written, if you will, on Airbnb. So we do have Airbnbs. We are working with them, and I appreciate the question. I will say this: we do have a major component of our office is compliance. We deal with outreach and education first. I believe that if citizens know they have a tax obligation, they want to meet that tax obligation. So before we get to an adverse situation, we want to have outreach and education first. In some cases, unfortunately, that doesn't prevail, and we have to go to the other section. So we can summons individuals to our office, put them under oath, ask questions. We can write a summons, if you will, to them through a special conservator of the peace, or any person in the Portsmouth Police Department can write, any officer with the police department can write operating a business without a license. They can write a summons for that as well. And so, having said that, we established a team, if you will, that will address compliance issues, and we have a multifaceted city and state program. We call it the Commissioners Combined Code Compliance Task Force, and that's made up of individuals from the sheriff's office, from the Commonwealth Attorney's office, when and if we need them, from the city attorney's office, from the city manager's office, from zoning and permits, from the ABC, from the Virginia Department of Health, from a Department of Agriculture. So any component that we need to bring into get our citizens into compliance, we work with on a regular basis. Zoning and all of those things that come along with that, permits and inspections, if you will. So we meet on a regular basis, but at least once a month, to come together to try to figure out how do we get to yes. The idea is get to yes, and then if you don't want to help us get to yes, then let's get them no out of here. There's no need to have a business in here that is not going to follow the rules and not going to play by the rules and pay, their fair share. There's no need to come in and run a business. You're not going to be a good, corporate citizen. So our goal is
we'll keep up with you about the Airbnbs, because it's already some misinformation going out. Someone told me that they are grandfathered in, and I said, it's not grandfathered in. And
no, it's
these people, are saying that like because somebody told them. And I want to make sure that we get the right information out there. I think the Airbnbs could be invaluable to Portsmouth, but
no question.
But they have to be regulated, for one thing. And the information like they've grandfathered in can't get out and be widespread, because
and that's the challenge we face, is to become things like that. But I'll work with you and others, or anyone we can, to get our message out. So thank you.
Sure. Thanks, man.
James, you're so right. And that's why the question had come up at the same time as you were bringing it up about Airbnbs, because I hear so many people talking about turning their homes into Airbnbs, but they have not really looked at all that's required of them if they should do such a thing. And are they following all the rules and regulations? Are they following all the laws? They see the dollars, but not looking at what is required on their end as well. So
because it is a business. It is a business.
And so I think it is something that we really need to really address to a larger extent, because especially with the casino, James, as you said, a lot of people were looking to turn their homes into Airbnbs. So it definitely needs to be addressed.
Well, I can tell you this, I'm committed to it, and I appreciate you addressing the issue. We also have an individual in our office. He's a senior deputy, Mr. Rick Wilkins, and that's his, he's in charge of that particular program through our compliance, as well as he's one of our senior management team members, and he is on top of it. And our goal, obviously, is to have better outreach and education, and maybe some, directed campaigns with, if you will, to individuals who want to do that. We can hold forums, and we welcome this as an opportunity, to use your format, and your platform, if you will, to reach more folks. And so we're happy to participate and do that. We may not have all the answers right now, but we sure can review them, and we can get to the point. I have been in, discussions with Airbnb, as well as the Virginia Department of Taxation, as well as my colleagues around the state. And we do have some housekeeping in Portsmouth to clean up. Obviously, if you can't get a zoning permit, we can't issue the license. And so that's part of the challenge that we face here. And that's really a unique situation, in that we have to, like you said, we're not in control of the whole facet of the whole piece of it, but we're one of the partners, and we got to work with others to make sure we do the right thing on behalf of the citizens. And I can just tell you, Airbnb is here to stay. We are going to have to embrace it or get out of the way. We get run over by the truck, so to speak. I mean, you have to embrace it, or you're gonna, it is still moving. And so the reality of where we are, it's up to us to get those answers to the public when they need it in a timely manner so that they can meet their responsibilities. I firmly believe in my heart that individuals who know what their responsibilities are, most of them want to meet them.
Yeah, most of them are run pretty well because they have criteria from the Airbnb company.
Right.
But locally, the localities have to step in and do what's best for the localities. So thanks for that answer. And I hope the city council follows through on what they said. Because they
I will say,
were the ones that brought it up.
I'm not plugging any particular one. A lot of information from Mr. Tillage, Vernon Tillage. He's been a very he's had some inquiries with regards to it, and we're happy to work with any council member and or any member of the public who has a question. We're happy to address it. So thanks for that.
Okay. Well, we're winding down, but if you have last statements from our host or you, Frankie, run a little over time, but we got time if you got time. But
I apologize for that. I just want
to tell
you.
I knew your answers were going to be detailed, and that's what I like about you. You really explain and give the detailed answers where people can understand it. Where like a friend of mine I listen to on the radio, down there where the goats can eat it. If you understand that.
I will be brief on this. I just want to say thank you for the opportunity. Like I said before, it's my honor, indeed my privilege to serve as a commissioner, but I do take my job seriously. I have a great job and I enjoy it, and I still enjoy it. If I think that I continue to have something to offer and support the citizens, I want to be able to do that. My family's committed to do it. Our team is committed to do it. And I just want to thank you and your team and the individuals involved with Portsmouth Coffee Talk for allowing me this opportunity to interact. I promise to come back. We can work out a schedule. We'll drill down on each of these items that we talked about and really get some details. But I'm sorry for the long answers, but in this type of business, devil's in the details. So you have to
you got to
express everything. But I wouldn't be sitting here today without your support and your encouragement and your love through the years. And I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for all that you do for the community. This is very important, and I'm happy to do my part. A lot of people say, "Oh, I see you everywhere." Well, that's what I need to be. I want to be involved.
That's your role, is to be everywhere.
Yeah. Once you elected, once you're elected, you belong to the public.
That's right. That's right.
I appreciate you for what you're doing. This is an important thing, and I'm happy to support. It's an important part of the process. And I just want to tell you, I thank you for everything that you do. I love and support each of you. So let's continue to work together on it.
We will. All right,
Frankie,
co-host.
Frankie, I want to say thank you so very much. It has been my pleasure to be able to work with you through the years. And I thank you for all the assistance you've given me the many times I've come to your office. And I just want to say thank you for coming on Portsmouth Coffee Talk, because there's so many misconceptions that people have about the city assessor's office, and they don't realize all the things that take place there, so it's important that we get the information out to the citizens so they can understand what services are being provided by your office. And so I want to thank you. I want to thank your team for your great work. And we just look forward to having you back on, especially we can get more into depth with some of the things that the Colonel has to ask, because he does ask those multifaceted questions. He is that guy who keeps us on the straight and narrow. But I want to say, Frankie, thank you so very much for coming on, and we look forward to having you on again, because there's so much more that we need to discuss about the city assessor's office. So thank you so very much. Colonel?
Okay, this one's easy. Somebody told me there's a statement out there saying that one of the pillars of keeping us out of freedom and democracy is that we pay taxes. That makes us not a third world country. That separates us from being a third world country. And that's just one of the pillars that we have unique to our country. And then saying that, I'd like to thank you on that piece, that you're holding up one of the pillars of society and keeping us as a democracy. And thanks, and love to have you come on, because I got a whole list of whole questions for you. And you answered everything I wanted to get seen, and people out there in electron lands saw your answers. So thank you.
Well, thank you for this opportunity. I'm happy to help. So you're doing a great job, and working together, we can make things work well here in the city of Portsmouth. Thank you.
And thank you, Frankie. You know how I feel about you. We worked together on many things out here in Truxton on the foundation we were working on at one time. And you have never failed to answer the call when called on, you know, to participate with the Civic League or anything else that we had doing. And especially this show here, you were no problem, you know. So we want to thank you. But anyway, let's go. And Portsmouth Coffee Talk is here for our voice.
For our community.
In our future.
And we
And-
salute you, Frankie.
We salute
I
you,
see with
Frankie.
your
Thank you.
Portsmouth coffee cup. We're gonna get
Yes.
you a Portsmouth. We're gonna get you a Portsmouth coffee
I'm looking
talk
forward to
cup.
it. Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you.
Well, we
Add that to
thank
your
you,
collection.
Frankie. We salute you. We do.
And
Thanks
I
again.
salute
We
you.
appreciate
Thank
you.
you.
Have a great day.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.